Hey guys, welcome to our brand new podcast. We've put a lot of heart and soul into this, and we hope you gain a lot of value from it.
This episode is all about how we started our business in 2020.
In the middle of COVID.
Yeah, so fun. And how the Balanced Families movement has resonated with so many parents that we interact with.
Before we get started, we have a big favor to ask. Since this is a brand new show, we could really use your help by writing a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can also watch the show. I've heard getting to see my chiseled bodybuilder physique really enhances the show.
Just like your receding hairline.
Ouch. Ouch, Jesse.
Okay, here it is, episode 1 of the Balanced Family podcast.
This is the Balanced Family podcast with Ben.
And Jessica. There's a lot to balance when you have a family. Marriage, kids, health, career, while you're trying to balance all the opinions out there on how to do things right.
Today, we'll cut through the noise, tackle hard questions, and share stories as we try to get to the heart of the things that really matter. Really glad we're starting a podcast because I feel like I'm always having a podcast in my head with myself.
Oh, yeah?
And it's a good time to talk some of this out. And
yeah.
I think you're really interesting, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I look forward to listening to you.
I think you're interesting, except for when you talk about history for 2 hours straight.
No, what? Okay. I try to be
my
an
interest.
I really don't understand people that don't like history. I know you like history.
I do, but it's just a lot. Well, I think it's because you got to deep dive. You got to set all the context.
Right.
You have to, it's just a lot. I feel like I have to have my notebook out and my pen ready to take notes. And I think that's probably because you were a teacher for so long.
I don't know. But it's literally hard for me to understand why people don't like history. I think they just haven't heard the right history, maybe that they can relate to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is there a topic that you're really passionate about that you're like, I really don't understand why people don't like this?
Childbirth, honestly, which is not the best, witty cocktail banter.
That is
You're
true.
at a party. I'm not going to bust out, information about a woman's cervix. That would be really awkward.
But
I could deep dive on it and talk all day about it.
Even with women though, because that's very normal with men. You talk about childbirth around men, they can get quickly
it's funny.
weirded
I have
out.
a lot of friends who are either don't have kids or are not married. And I would say in that demographic, they get real weirded out when I start talking about it. There's a few of them that get interested, but there's a lot of them that are like, oh, no, please, too soon.
Yeah. It is like another world, labor and delivery room.
But then
is
I feel like
world.
it's when you start being interested in having kids, then I'm your girl.
Yeah.
Because I can sit and educate you all day. So anyway.
Well, cool. Well, here we are. Look at us.
Look at us.
Starting a podcast.
Look at us. My life is a TikTok trending sound pretty much. Look at us.
So we titled this first episode, The Balanced Families Movement and Why the World Wants It, Needs It, but also Hates It.
Yep.
So why are we why this podcast? Why now?
Well, I think that you would be living under a rock if you don't know that our world is being pushed by extremes. And I think especially in the parenting, marriage, having babies space, there are a lot of controversial topics. I was just watching a video right before we started this about raw milk. This is an example. You have the crunchy side of the internet who's like, raw milk is amazing. We've completely lost the benefits of raw milk. And then you have the medical side of the community or just the world in general that's like, we pasteurize milk for a reason. There's these horrible bacteria. And I think that that's one example of, millions of examples that I could give about how our world, and especially with social media, there are just so many opposing opinions. It's you don't really know what is the truth because there probably is truth on both sides, right?
Yeah.
There probably are benefits to raw milk, but there's also risks and harms that can come if you drink raw milk that's contaminated or whatever. So I think that for us, the Balanced Families movement and what we're doing is kind of our answer to that, our pushback to that, to say, hey, you can actually be in the middle and have opinions, but there's not really, it's not very like fun or sexy to be balanced. Everyone just wants to be controversial and edgy.
Right. Well, and you can, as we know, you can have a quote unquote extreme viewpoint and still have empathy and understanding for people that may think differently. I'm just always interested to understand why people think the way they do or the choices they make, because it is interesting how many people don't really think about their choices as well. I think there's parents, right? There's a lot of parents that just go through the motions and don't really think deeply about things. And then there's other parents with like analysis paralysis and are gripped with anxiety.
Right.
And parenting these days, it's like we're over-informed, we're over-educated. We're like the most educated generation ever. If you put it in pure terms of degrees.
Right.
But there's less ability to make confident decisions and more anxiety than we've ever seen in parents. And the decision-making in parenthood, it's like crazy how many decisions you make.
So many decisions.
You think life is hard and decisions are hard before you have kids.
Yeah.
And you're like, this decision that I have to make, these 100 decisions I have to make every day is going to affect all these human beings for the rest of their life.
Right. Which is why I think so many parents are either exhausted and overwhelmed and have postpartum depression or whatever, or are completely anxious. And, we're growing up in especially as parents, like we are anxious. It's not just only our children who have more and more anxiety. And research is showing that very clearly, but us as parents, like we are so much more anxious. There's all those funny accounts talking about how in the 80s, our parents would just like let us go out the door and be like, be back by sunset. And now it's like, if anyone is sitting on a park bench and not actively interacting with their kid while at the playground, everyone's like, oh, they're a bad parent. And like how can you even function in a world that makes you constantly second guess every single thing you think and everything that you do? So, and we experienced that ourselves as new parents. So we had our first kid back in 2014.
Back in 2014.
Back in the day when there were still blogs. And that really, like the mommy blog scene was huge back then. The social media was a thing, but it wasn't an information source. It was a place to dump all your weird pictures with filters on them. That was it. Blogs were where it's at. And even back then, all of the information overload, even from that was really hard to manage as a new parent, because you want to do right. You want to be a good parent. And so I think our movement, the balanced movement, is something that really was formed out of those early years of us having kids. Yeah.
Okay. We need to share about our company. It's founded in 2020, Balanced Families, and what that's all about. Some people may not even know us as the Balanced Birth Couple, which was part of Balanced Families. But quick background for those that don't know anything about us. We both came from education background.
Yep.
And we were in grad school together.
That's where we met.
It is.
And we technically met at church, but we also were in the same master's program together.
Right. So we both got our masters, went to teach in public schools.
Yeah, our masters were in English, secondary social studies.
Yeah, so we both worked in education for many years. Yep. You then eventually stayed home for a season.
Correct.
Am I getting too fast? That might be a good place to pick it up from when you started staying home. Yeah, I could.
Well, but after we had our first, or while I was pregnant with our first, you got your EDS.
Yeah.
So you got your, curriculum specialist? I don't even know.
I don't even remember.
I was pregnant, and then he finished it up actually after I had our firstborn.
All I know is that I'm like
nuts.
36 hours away from a doctorate, and I have zero desire to have a doctorate.
It's tough.
But sometimes it's like, pulling that card out would be convenient sometimes.
It would be nice.
But no reason and no desire to go back to school.
Yeah. In 2017, I stopped teaching. So I taught for 6 years. Stopped teaching to stay home with we had 2 kids by then. And also just wasn't really sure whether or not teaching was kind of my like lifelong passion, which is you get your master's degree in something and then you have kids and then you're like, do I really want to do this? That was kind of my experience. And really, honestly, I just wanted to be, I didn't really know what the future was going to hold. I just wanted to be home with my kids. And so got pregnant with our third. And after I had her in 2018, started kind of asking myself, we were on one income. It was like, what are we going to do? Yeah. We'll do a whole podcast episode on that. What that was like.
We have that plan, like how to be broke.
Like, cause literally we did that for very long, extended amounts of time, like having not enough money. But anyway, just kind of was like, I don't know what I want to do. I need to contribute financially at this point. Don't really see myself going back to work full time at that point, especially. And so was looking into maybe copywriting. I have my degree in English. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe, and then everything changed with one conversation that I had. Well, I had two conversations. First conversation was at church. It was after a meeting. I was talking with a good friend who had just had her baby and she was struggling to breastfeed and was really just massively struggling with guilt about giving her baby formula. And that was something for me that I had also had to make that decision with our third to wean her a little early and give her formula. And so my heart just went out to this mom because she was really struggling with this, and was struggling mostly just with the content that she was consuming about the benefits of breastfeeding. And I just
valid stuff,
totally valid stuff. But there was something that just kind of snapped in me, so to speak. That was just like, gosh, I wish that there was a place where moms could learn and get educated without all of this shame and guilt. I was like, I feel like there's a way that we could do this, especially about birth, but also about postpartum and all, like you were talking about all the decisions. Like, why can't there be a space like that? So a few days later, we hung out on the back patio. We like to do that sometimes.
Who, me and you?
You and me.
Okay.
We hung out.
Right. Got you. Okay. I'm tracking.
You and me hung out on the back patio. You were there. So
I know where you're going. I'm a little hung up because I'm pretty sure this conversation took place in our bathroom, but it's fine. You can continue.
Should we argue about this?
No, we'll argue about it later.
Okay.
I have some data points.
I do too. Anyway,
right, you can keep going.
In my mind, it was this, because we have twinkle lights on our back patio. So maybe I've just like romanticized this moment in my mind, but we were talking on the back patio with fairy lights. Okay. And I was sharing with you about this conversation that I'd had with this mom and how like, I just was so frustrated for her about all the guilt that she was feeling about this decision that in my mind, I knew as an older mom, like you're going to look back on that decision and you're going to understand that it wasn't as big of a deal as you made it out to be. But unfortunately, she was consuming all this content that was saying breastfeeding is the only way to feed and, all of that, which of course there's benefits to breastfeeding. But in my mind, I'm like, we can, and I was like, I could talk about the benefits of breastfeeding in a way that doesn't make a mom who chooses to formula feed feel incredibly guilty or shameful about that decision. And I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't think there's anything like that on the internet, especially on social media, like a truly balanced space that is educational and informative, that's evidence-based, but also like gives and empowers couples to make the decision that's right for them. Like that was kind of my thing, was like, yo, like there's like, we have life, like not, our life is not, and our decisions are not just only based on what evidence says. Right. Like you actually do as a human live a life that absolutely massively changes the decisions that you need to make for your family. And so like, why can't we create something like that? I was talking with Ben about it. And it was like the idea just came from heaven. Because I also have a huge interest in birth. And I did at that time, I did before with my first baby, man, like I just consumed so much information about birth. I loved researching it. And I was like, I think I might want to become a childbirth educator, Ben. I was like, I think I might want to create a birth class like this. Because for me, in my birth experiences, I had 3 births that had gone, I'd planned for unmedicated, and all 3 of them in their own way had gone massively different than my plan. I was really unprepared, had kind of deep dove into all the natural stuff, and then had to completely change my plans, but didn't really feel super informed. Like, my second was a C-section. I had I knew nothing about C-sections.
Yeah.
All I knew is that they were bad.
Yeah.
And so then when you get one, you're like, okay, what do I do right now? And so it was like, yo, like we should be telling moms about C-sections, even if they want an unmedicated birth, because part of the trauma of that for me was not knowing anything, not knowing what's happening to my body, not knowing how to recover. And so anyways, I was talking with Ben about this on the back patio, and it was like one of those moments, where you just like, I'll never forget it. 'Cause I could tell like he was really vibing with it and really interested. Do you want to share your part about?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to establish this did happen in our master bathroom.
Stop it. Are we gonna do this right now?
Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm like,
dude, that's not even like, let's just romanticize this. Like, even if it was the bathroom, like no one wants to hear about some conversation you have in the bathroom.
Well, this is what's funny is that like you said it's on the back porch with the twinkle lights, which is like this beautiful, emotionally safe place for you. And like your ideal place to talk about something.
Are you saying the bathroom isn't an emotionally safe place?
Well, I will say like when I take a shower, I think a lot when I'm taking a shower. And so and maybe that's the problem is that I'm like.
I wouldn't have talked to you about this if you were in the shower.
I feel like we were standing in front of our sinks talking about this, but regardless.
Okay.
In my head, it's going to stay in the bathroom.
Whatever, dude.
But I like your image a little better, obviously.
We should just stick with mine.
Yeah, I like that.
It's vibey.
So anyway, but I remember that resonating with me because I was very involved in the birth.
Yeah.
And I became really passionate about the birth. And I didn't really think that was unique or anything. I just really remember taking the birth class and you. Yeah,
we took a birth class with our first.
Yeah. And I remember you
it was 12 hours long.
Yeah, it was very long. I remember you gradually coming to this realization that you really wanted an unmedicated birth. Mm-hmm. And I saw the importance of my role inside of that through the classes. And I could tell 100%. The more that I became interested and invested in that, the more empowered you felt. Mm-hmm. And so much of the seeds of Balanced Birth Couple, it was me. It wasn't like when we talk about this stuff on Instagram, it's not just like cutesy, ideal. Like I experienced that as a man, like coming to the realization that I had a place inside of this process and that I could make a difference for you. And so that's whenever we started talking about it, about how there are no men really talking about birth. And years later, or at least that point in that conversation, which was many years later, like I can clearly track the process of being supportive and involved in your birth and being a better husband and father and partnering with you with our kids. Like it is like the foundation, or it was for me. And that doesn't mean if guys, aren't involved in the birth, they're going to be terrible dads. That's not what I mean. But I feel like the more you're involved early on, it makes a lot of that aha happen quicker for you.
100%.
And so that was significant when we were talking about that and thinking about education and what it could look like. And that's when it led to us realizing like, man, it'd be awesome if Ben was involved in somehow.
Right, because that's really balance in its essence.
If we're going to be balanced, we need to talk about
partners. Yeah.
And that was pretty significant. And then from there, I do remember from there, we just talked about this idea of balance in general and just how everything's so polarized. The second you have kids, it's just like from the vaccines to this medication and this shot and the sleeping and the feeding. It's just insane. And it keeps going and going and going. All the way to where our kids are now in school age.
There's still massive decisions and
I think that when we think about balance, like we as teachers have interacted with thousands of kids and thousands of, I taught high school. I've been around so many high schoolers and I feel like we've both been able to see a lot of the fruits of parents' choices. And it's like when you interact with kids and you're with their parents at parent-teacher conference, like, that's always such an aha. You're like, yep. Like everything I theorized your parents would be like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And that's whenever I kind of had this slip out of my mouth where we were talking about a balanced birth. What would a balanced birth class look like? And that's when I said, yeah, and really related to all these issues we're talking about, it's really about becoming a balanced family. And that was kind of like when it dropped in our hearts of like, yeah, that's really where we eventually want to go is a place called Balanced Families, a community for people that don't just want to be pushed around by the extremes and the polarization in our world. And people that are not just going to be robots and read the research and do what it says, but weigh that with their own values, their own philosophies, and the life that they want to live and that they want to create for their children. And so that's the seed of Balanced Families. Little did we know the adventure that we were about to be on in the next few years. That was in 2019.
That was. Well, and we had already decided to make it a virtual class for many reasons.
The birth class.
Yeah, the birth class. We were like, hey, let's just start with the birth class. I was really interested in that. So I started working on my certified childbirth educator license thing that I had to do. So that would have been early 2020. And we all know where this is going. Because March 2020, I was finishing up my certification. I actually wasn't even technically certified yet, but I had gone through almost all of the curriculum, and COVID hit. And we immediately saw a need for couples. That literally had no birthing classes anymore because all their in-person classes, even at the hospital, were completely canceled. Also, dads were being thrown into being the main support person because doulas were not even allowed inside of the room. So if you'd planned on having a doula, that was not an option. And also just all of the fear. Obviously, it was just a massively anxiety-ridden time. And so we decided our very first class we ever made was a free COVID. You remember that COVID-19 birth class? Okay. How long was it? It was probably a couple hours long.
I don't know, but it was really good. And we made no money because we gave it away for free. We gave it away for free.
And we had a lot of people take it.
And then later we were like, maybe we charge something.
It was good. I'm sure maybe don't search it. I have no idea if it's still out there on the internet, but I don't think it is. But
it was a short.
It was short, and it was like like the bare essentials, what you need to know to be able to like make it through your birth kind of a thing. But from there we were like, all right, we got to do this now. Like now's the time to actually write the curriculum for a full birth class and record it. It was the most it's the most insane time period. I've had a few really busy times in my life, but I feel like we tend to like fall into those a lot. We just do this to ourselves. Well, I feel like it's probably just, I don't know, like the call on our lives. Maybe we're just the people that we just kind of go for things. We don't really like to spin our wheels. And so my parents live in a very, very rural town in Oklahoma. And we knew like there's no COVID there. And so we shipped.
At that point.
At that point we had, let's see, our youngest would have been 1.5-year-old at that point. So our oldest would have been 6, I think. She was finishing up kindergarten. And so we shipped them off to my parents for a week. And I think maybe I'd had the course recorded or written out at that point, but we recorded, edited, and got it all out in 1 week. And it was this class was, how long was it? Our first one? It's like 10 hours long. It was way too long.
Longer current version.
Because we were just kind of learning how to do all this. So it's our OG class. Yeah. And it was called,
Comprehensive course.
Comprehensive course.
Because we had a more natural focused course. Yeah. Short course. And then later we combined those.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me of all those details. Yeah, it was wild. Ben had never edited videos really like that before. Not like that. He did like 3 all-nighters, I feel like, in a row. Super low quality. It was nuts.
But that was
good times.
That was absolute. Well, I just remember just having it was crazy. Starting the business. Yeah. And I was working full time, of course.
He was.
And
yes.
I've never really struggled with working hard. I mean, whenever we were broke years ago, I've had multiple jobs. This was another level, though.
Well, because we had all of our kids at home, and we were both trying to do stuff.
I remember vividly many hours.
I do not recommend starting a business when the world is in the middle of a pandemic.
And when you have toddlers. I remember vividly, like, working in our closet.
Yes.
Like, because there was nowhere else to work.
Or out in our kitchen in the middle of the night. Yeah. Like, oh, my gosh.
So, and all this time, you're running the social media.
Yeah, we had started socials. And then it was that fall that
TikTok
we
was
did
just
our first,
started.
I almost wish we should find a clip and try to put it up here. Or I don't know if we can. The first TikTok video we ever made, it like blew up. In today's standards, it would be 100% cringy. I almost don't want to show it because it's like dancing.
Yeah, back then it was like you had to dance. Like all the like consultants are like, you must dance and point to things.
Yeah, and point.
Yeah, dance and point to the text. Yeah, it was like, that was like the pinnacle of content creation.
So we did that and it went viral on TikTok, which was fun. And so from there, I feel like our social media presence definitely started growing. Instagram didn't have Reels back then, so it was...
Yeah, that's true. And we kept growing. And then the next year is when we redid the birth class.
We did, because we were like, okay, this is, we need to redo this.
Yeah, and it's
much better.
The current version that it is now. And then we partner with our good friend, the baby whisperer, Jessica Newcomb.
Yeah.
And we created the breastfeeding class.
She's a IBCLC, APRN, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know. She's
baby whisperer.
I like that.
And then the newborn class.
Yep.
And that was in 2021.
Correct.
And then was it in the 2021 when I left my previous job? So then, I left my job in... Yeah.
2022. Oh, okay. Anyway.
I left my job in fall of 2021 to work for another company.
That's right.
A private education company doing all sorts of things.
Virtually.
But it was all virtual.
At home.
Pretty flexible hours for the most part.
Which, by the way, that was a huge decision because Ben was kind of an up and comer inside of the largest school district in our state. So it was a big career decision for you to be like, I'm going to leave this really amazing public school job that has a lot of potential for growth to come and work.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved pretty heavily in the state level as far as social studies.
He's kind of a big deal.
In the history curriculum world.
In the social studies curriculum world.
So many people, as we discussed earlier, are really bored by.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I thought that was my trajectory forever. Right. My vision for myself would have been, I'll be working in district administration someday or something after I'm
superintendent,
principal somewhere. I don't know.
Like that,
But that was a massive leap of faith.
It was.
Because we also took a pay cut.
We did.
But really, truly felt like Balanced Families, there was something where this was going. It wasn't just going to be birth forever, even though that's, the core, the foundation of what we offer now. But it was just hard to explain. It was just something in our hearts knew that we needed to create more resources for parents. And so anyway, in 2021, that's when I left.
Yep. 2022 is when you ended
up. So at the end of 2021, I was supposed to get my contract renewed with this company.
No, this would, yes.
Excuse me. The end of the school year. I still work in like a school year brain.
It's true. August
now.
to May. It's true.
Yeah, the end of the year to me is like May.
The end of the year is May. Yeah. Anyway, I was like, wait, that's 2022.
So the end of, the
middle of 2022.
I was supposed to that job was really stable, but.
And it would have been, I guess, great.
It would have been great to keep that going, create more safety net there. But my contract wasn't renewed. They had a massive shrinkage in the company, had to let a lot of people go.
Yeah.
And it was a huge shocker even for my boss and stuff. And it was crazy. And it was pretty much a part of that tech boom that a lot of virtual companies boomed during COVID and went too far. But anyway, it was in the fall of 2022 that those paychecks ended. And then I joined you full time.
The rubber met the road.
Yeah. And at that time we were working out of our bedroom. Both of us had our desks.
The desks that you see
had
behind
us.
I
had a corner.
Yes. And then we had our dressers.
Yeah.
Did we even also have a couch or did we take the couch out? I can't remember.
I don't know.
But that was top 10 worst.
I almost went crazy.
It was like being in the same room for 24 hours straight with your husband.
We never fought. We never argued. We never.
Stop it.
It was
fake news. Don't listen to him.
That was crazy stuff, dude.
That was a testing season for our marriage.
You are my soulmate. But there is no human on earth that we are designed to be in the same room with 20 out of 24 hours.
It was bad.
Without being some pain in your soul.
So we built this office that we're in, and then that's it.
So building our backyard office really changed our lives. We're still on different corners of the room, but it's nice we're not in the same room that we sleep as well.
Lordy mercy.
And so I forgot to mention, when I started full time, I built the dad class.
Oh yeah.
Which is a fatherhood empowerment program.
Pretty awesome class.
It's a pretty awesome stuff that I'm excited about.
A little different than what we had been doing.
Yeah.
And so that was cool.
Yeah. But the future, we have...
we had Baby Sleep as well. We just launched Baby Sleep
with a Baby Sleep consultant.
Past year.
Yeah. Our blog's expanding. We want to create more and more resources that hit on that balance perspective.
Yes.
And our community, our online community for our students, I just love that place. And why don't you talk briefly about that, of just the evolution of that?
The online community? Yeah. I think when you think about an online community, especially a Facebook group, you think about just, if you are a new mom and you are on any public large baby group, there's literally like funny satire about this on Instagram about how, like, if you ever post a question, you're going to get people commenting like, Mama, I just want to say this because I care about you and your baby, but what you're suggesting is terrible and horrible, and you are a terrible person. That's like basically what it's like to be in those. I was a part of those when I was a new mom, and oh gosh, so much anxiety. So in my mind,
but if you put like a heart emoji, like all that hate goes away.
Hey mama, that's what I just hate that. I totally got that once I asked a question and someone was like, hey mama, and I was like, hey. I hate you. You're making me really anxious right now. Anyway, so I wanted to create a community that was the opposite of that. That was a place that was truly supportive, that people could set aside their own opinions, because I think that's hard to do. Right. But to really just be in a place to respect what that person is asking and wanting to do. And, obviously that's within reason. Obviously there's things that are actually wrong or not good to do and are unsafe. But in general, I find that most things are actually not in that category. And so in my mind, I wanted to create a community that really was actually really resourceful, but also would not be overwhelming and would be respectful of people's choices. And so when I set out to make our private community, it is on Facebook, honestly, just because that's the best place for it to be. I would love to have like another place for that community to live, but for now, Facebook is the best
people already have
for
Facebook.
us. Yeah,
it's kind of easier.
But anyway, it is my little utopia. It's
really great.
It is I just was reading a comment this morning from one of our students. She had a baby at 35 weeks. So, late premature. And she's been asking a ton of questions. Cause that's a huge, it's a huge game changer. And she just was messaging this morning of like, just thank you guys so much for just answering my questions and being so supportive. And, she chose to do the different things with breastfeeding. And there's just a lot that she's had to manage. And I just I'm not the one actually even responding to her.
Right, yeah.
What's amazing is that it's actually all of our students responding to her and supporting her. Sometimes even people will get on there and just be like, hey, I actually don't have any advice, but I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And part of it is culture setting within, that group. And I worked really hard at the beginning to set that culture, and we still do. But overall, I think everyone is so protective of it because it is so wonderful that, it's amazing.
Well, I feel like the balanced families philosophy attracts balanced people.
That's probably true.
And I think that's why it's been good.
It's like a safe space for balanced people.
Like, come in here if you don't want to be crazy and extreme and polarized.
Right.
And even if you have extreme views on something, you're able to empathize and
100%. Because there are people in that group that I know have more extreme views.
And I'm so thankful for people that think differently than us. And
yes,
it's like
100%.
I have come to respect and appreciate so many people's differences.
Yep.
But I just appreciate the love in the group too. I know we had a recent family. One of the dads was diagnosed with cancer, had an amazing outpouring of donations. And it was just like instantly within a day
so many
raised
people reaching out.
our goal that we wanted to provide for them. We have a dad's group now.
Yes.
And it's live and kicking. Coming on up there. But anyway.
Dads are a little less social, but.
Yeah. That's how guys are. But there's some good stuff. So
they're
anyway.
also not like bleeding from their nipples, etc.
Oh
so.
my gosh. Why'd you have to go there? Oh
just saying. Women need more support in postpartum, typically, especially in comparison to men. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. Thanks for that image.
So sorry.
But I think it's a good transition to talk about just the balanced families movement. So what does it mean to be a balanced family? Like we say that a lot and those are kind of vague words.
Yeah.
But when we talk, what do we mean by that?
Yeah. It's kind of like a summary of what we've been saying because we have been kind of talking about it. You know, I think one thing to be a balanced family is to be able to go into decisions with an open mind. So I think, you know, a lot of times obviously we have to make a decision. So for example, if you're talking about birth, you have to make a decision eventually on what kind of birth you want. Do you want an epidural or do you not want an epidural? But a balanced family will approach that decision, number one, looking at their values, what they actually value as a couple. An unmedicated birth experience and an epidural birth experience are different. And inherently then they are going to have an impact on the way that you and your partner are birthing together. There's going to be impacts. And so we obviously help educate for that. But I think a balanced family is able then to look at that from a values-based perspective and then to actually still have an open hand and not be so one-sided on something that then if they need to change their birth plan, if an unmedicated birth is not actually in the cards for them, that they're able to flex and flow. And because of that, then they have reduced trauma, they have more joy, they feel more confident, and they feel at peace. And I think that would be like the end result of being a balanced family is that you feel more peace and you feel more connectivity together. I mean, there's just so many things.
I mean, birth really is like a metaphor for parenthood where you make plans.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
But like stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know?
And it ain't in your control all the time as much as you wish it would be.
Yeah. Your kids don't just come out exactly how you imagine them on paper. Like, but that's a metaphor. It's like you make plans for what you envision, what you want, but you're ready for the unpredictable.
Right.
And parenthood is extremely unpredictable. I wrote down some of the things that balance means to me is that you're teachable and you're open even when you're confident about your decision. I think you can be fully confident and decided on something, but still be open and humble enough to listen to other people's wisdom or experience and like take stuff from that. And it's not even that you might change what you do to match theirs, but you take the principles.
Right.
I feel like there's principles you can learn from every parent on the way they do things. And what I mean by a principle is like maybe a motivator or a value system or basically the reasoning behind they do something.
Yeah.
And so in other words, it's like screen time. You may differ on them on all the X's and O's and logistics of how they manage screen time in their home. But whenever I meet parents that have a good philosophy that guides those parameters, I'm always inspired by that. And I take those principles from me.
100%. I think another really big one is nuance, being able to navigate that nuance, because every decision actually does come with a lot of nuance. A lot of people really, and I think part of the reason why balance is a hard pill to swallow is because I think a lot of people just want a formula. They just kind of want it to be black and white.
Right.
They just want it to be right and wrong. It makes their decision making easy, right? But it results in a whole lot of really negative things if you go about life literally only thinking black and white.
Right.
That's not a way to live. Life is full of nuance. And so part of being balanced is being able to understand and see that nuance and navigate it and understand that depending on the situation and the nuance inside of that situation, you may end up making a different decision for each kid.
Yeah.
For each everything. So nuance, I feel like, is a huge component of balance that, again, a lot of people just, I think it's tiring to have to like actually think through all the nuanced, you know, aspects of something. So.
Yeah. And that kind of ties into why we wrote that of like why the world needs it, wants it, but also hates it, is that being balanced, being empathetic, seeing something from multiple perspectives, having to think deeply about your worldview and your philosophy and how you build your family, like it's challenging. And I don't know if a lot of people like that challenge. I like the challenge, and there's a lot of people that do like the challenge,
Yeah.
But like parenting, that was a funny little pause.
Parenting.
Parenting is not always this copy and paste easily.
It's not.
It's not.
It's actually not.
It is. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And it sounds cheesy, but you and I used to say that even before we even had kids, of just like, man, life is a long journey. Like it winds and curves. There's ups and there's downs. And that's the process of building a family.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason I think that people struggle with the idea of balance is people want to quickly identify you, like where you fall on the, and that maybe that's just the effect of like our politics are so polarized,
probably,
at least here in the States. And I know we have people in our audience.
That's polarized everywhere though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Polarization's everywhere, but it's like, you can just tell whenever you're talking to somebody and they're trying to pin you down. They're trying to figure out where you fit on the spectrum.
Yeah. Like, are you crunchy or are you not crunchy?
Are you crunchy or not crunchy? Are you, I mean, like politics is a great example. It's like if you say something too conservative around somebody that's liberal, or you say something that seems a little bit, liberal around somebody that's conservative, it's like they get uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's like, what's up with that? I feel like I could go on with a lot of examples, but you get the point. It's like people are always trying to pin you on one side or the other. But another thing about balance that you and I talk a lot about is just being intentionality. And that's hard to do as a parent if you've not been intentional with your life.
Right.
And I know that I have I know people that like parenthood kind of just hits them really suddenly.
Yeah.
And it all of a sudden is like a fresh start to be more intentional about everything you do. And that's the beautiful thing about, I think, parenthood, is that your identity changes, like your purpose changes. Everything about your world changes.
And it is an opportunity for you to actually get to critically think about the decision that you're making and be intentional. And that is the essence of being balanced.
Yeah.
Is just actually being intentional.
Yeah.
And so if you are an intentional person, then you are in the right place, because that's really who Ben and I are. We're very intentional about our lives and the way we build it. And this podcast is going to kind of give everybody a little open view into just what we do with our life and how we think about things.
And I think something really important to us is joy.
It's true.
Like having the joy inside of building a family, building a marriage. And when you're just too stressed out about, quote unquote, doing it right about everything, it sucks that joy away. When you're driven more by your fears and your worries, rather than just accepting the fact you don't know the answers. Like there's decisions you're going to make that you do not know how that's going to always affect your kids 10 years down the road or yourself. And that's why it takes boldness. It takes courage to be balanced and just do your very best. And that's been a driver for us of like, when we feel the joy getting sucked out, that's when we know we've got to like reevaluate how we're viewing a situation. Yeah, we really look forward to the future of this podcast, marriage, parenting, finances,
being broke.
We have a lot of stories to tell.
A whole lot of stories.
A lot of hardships, a lot of crises.
I'm so excited.
A lot of heartbreak, but a lot of exciting stuff.
I've been waiting for this podcast.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be all about birth. It's actually going to be about the balanced family, how to be a balanced family.
And the balanced family, we're trying to be one.
Yep. That's our goal.
We're not perfect.
No.
So this podcast is about joining us on this journey.
Yep. See you next time.
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening today. It would mean so much to us if you left a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you heard this.
And let us know your thoughts on today's episode by leaving a comment on Spotify or YouTube, where you can also watch these episodes.